According to the media research, the typical American listened to 195 hours of music per year. Let's put that in, 195 hours. So there you go, 195 hours. Richard is a big country and western music fan. He listens to music while working around the house, reading, and riding in his truck. Assume the number of hours spent listening to music follows a normal distribution with a standard deviation of 8.5 hours. And now we asked a couple of questions. So let's look at part A. So we actually have the distribution of how much time Americans spend listening to music each year, and that is our random variable X. That's what the question is about, and that's what we're given information about. So then we have the average listening time is 195, and the standard deviation is 8.5. So what do they actually want us to do for part A? If Richard is in the bottom 1% of listening time, well, listening time increases as we go this way to the right, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200. It goes down this way, 194, 193, 192, and so on. So Richard is in the bottom 1%, so the bottom 1% is going to be over here. And if it's 1%, the bottom 1%, this is the bottom 1% in here. That's the bottom 1% in that shaded area there. So if Richard is in the bottom 1%, at most, what is the maximum? Well, in this shaded area, the maximum is this value over here. This is the top of the shaded area. So that's at most. How many hours does he listen per year? Okay, so we need to basically find this value in here. Well, this is going to be a very simple question if we use the power of Excel. It's an inverse question. This is a question where we're given the probability or the proportion. We need to come down this way, so it's an inverse question. So we're just going to use norm dot inverse. Now you could have standardized like I did in the previous example, but that becomes a bit of a nightmare. And then if you do standardize, you have to use norm.s.inverse, but we're not going to standardize, we're just doing it from here. We need to put the probability to the left of the point in question. Excel works to the left, so I need the probability to the left is 0.01. And then I have to tell it what the mean is, which is 195. And the standard deviation, which is 8.5. So I can just pop over to Excel right now, and I can put these values into Excel. Okay, so let's do that, and let's see what value we get coming through. So let's go, it's going to be equal to norm.inverse, and the proportion, or the area, to the left of that point is 0.01, which is 1%, and then we're going to put in the mean, which is 195, and then the standard deviation, which is 8.5, and we're going to get value. We still have percentage from the question we were doing before. Let's just change that over to general, change the decimal places. So it's going to be 175.23 is going to be the answer to 2 decimal places. Let's go back over here. So the answer here is going to be 175. Well, the answer to this as well is equal to 175.23. And that's what the answer is in here, 175.23. So the bottom 1% of Americans listen to at most 175.23 hours. They don't listen to more than that. They could listen to less than that, but not more than that. We're talking about the people in the shaded area. Let's look at part 2 of the question. If Richard is in the top 1% in terms of listening time. So for part B, again, a random variable, amount of time that Americans spend listening to music each year. Average is 195. standard deviation is 8.5, and then we must, they want us to find the top 1%, so this is the top 1%. And what's this value in here? That's what they want us to find. If Richards is in the top 1%, say somewhere in the top 1%, he didn't say he's exactly here, but they say he's in the top 1%, and this is the top 1% in terms of listening time. At least, or what is the minimum hours does he spend listening per year? So this would be the least. See, because remember it's an increasing number line. So he's in the top 1%. So the top 1%, this is all the top 1% of people. They listen to this amount, or this amount, or this amount, or this amount, or this amount. But they all listen to at least this value in here. And that's what we want to find. So again, we're just going to use our trusty Excel function, norm dot inverse. Remember, Excel wants the area to the left of the point. That's just the way Excel works. That's the way they set it up. The area to the left of that point is 0.99. And we put in the mean, which is 195. And the standard deviation, which is 8.5. And we just go over to Excel and put it in there. And we're going to get our answer. Let's go over to Excel. So here. And so it's going to be equals norm.inverse of 0.99. Then we put in the means. Excel's telling us what we need, the mean, 195, and it asks for the standard deviation, which is 8.5. Close the parentheses. And that gives us 214.77. If we want to do it to 2 decimal places, 214.77 will be our answer. So go back to here. So this equals 214.77. So the top 1% of Americans, in terms of listening to music, spend at least 214.77 hours per year listening to music. They may well spend more time listening to music, but they spend at least 214.77 hours listening to music.